The Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 goes to a brave and committed champion of peace, to a woman who keeps the flame of democracy burning amidst a growing darkness. The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 to Maria Corina Machado. She is receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. As the leader of the democratic forces in Venezuela, Maria Corina Machado is one of the most extraordinary examples of civilian courage in Latin America in recent times. Ms. Machado has been a key unifying figure in a political opposition that was once deeply divided, an opposition that found common ground in the demand for free election and representative government. This is precisely what lies at the heart of democracy, our shared willingness to defend the principles of popular rule, even though we disagree. At a time when democracy is under threat, it is more important than ever to defend this common ground. Venezuela has evolved from a relatively democratic and prosperous country to a brutal and authoritarian state that is now suffering a humanitarian and economic crisis. Most Venezuelans live in deep poverty, even as the few at the top enrich themselves. The violent machinery of the state is directed against its own population. Nearly 8 million people have left the country. The opposition has been systematically suppressed by means of election rigging, legal prosecution, and imprisonment. Venezuela's authoritarian regime makes political work extremely dangerous. As the founder of Sumate, an organization devoted to democratic development, Ms. Machado stood up for free and fair elections more than 20 years ago. As she said, it was a choice of ballots over bullets. In political office and in her service to organizations since then, Ms. Machado has spoken out for judicial independence, human rights, and popular representation. She has spent years working for the freedom of the Venezuelan people. Ahead of the election of 2024, Ms. Machado was the opposition's presidential candidate, but the regime blocked her candidacy. She then backed the representative of a different party, Edmundo González Urrutia, in the election. Hundreds of thousands of volunteers mobilized across political divides. They were trained as election observers to ensure a transparent and fair election. Despite the risk of harassment, arrest, and torture, citizens across the country held watch over the polling stations. They made sure the final tallies were documented before the regime could destroy ballots and lie about the outcome. The efforts of the collective opposition, both before and during the election, were innovative and brave, peaceful and democratic. The opposition received international support when its leaders publicized the vote counts that had been collected from the country's election districts, showing that the opposition had won by a clear margin. but the regime refused to accept the election result and clung to power. Democracy is a precondition for lasting peace. However, we live in a world where democracy is in retreat, where more and more authoritarian regimes are challenging norms and resorting to violence. The Venezuelan regime's rigid hold on power and its repression of its population are not unique in the world. We see the same trends globally. Rule of law abused by those in control, free media silenced, critics imprisoned, and societies pushed towards authoritarian rule and militarization. In 2024, more elections were held than ever before, but fewer and fewer are free and fair. In its long history, the Norwegian Nobel Committee has honored brave women and men who have stood up to repression, who have carried the hope of freedom in prison cells, on the streets, and in public squares, and who have shown by their actions that peaceful resistance can change the world. In the past year, Ms. Machado has been forced to live in hiding, despite serious threats against her life. She has remained in the country, a choice that has inspired millions. When authoritarians seize power, it is crucial to recognize courageous defenders of freedom who rise and resist. Democracy depends on people who refuse to stay silent, who dare to step forward despite grave risk, and who remind us that freedom must never be taken for granted, but must always be defended, with words, with courage, and with determination.
Well, the Nobel Peace Prize for the year 2025 has been announced, and it is being handed over to Maria Corina Machado of Venezuela. And my colleague Sudha Sadanand is joining me right now. Clearly, Sudha, it is a case where Donald Trump has missed out despite building a lot of expectation around a Nobel Peace Prize. But in very clear terms, the panel over there has made it clear that it's the heart of democracy where you stand, you rise, you resist against authoritarian regime. And that is exactly what Maria Corina Machado has been given this prestigious honor for 2025.
Absolutely. You know, this is actually a win for democracy. Considering we are one of the most vibrant democracies in the world, it's a win for all of us, and also double whammy considering it's a woman who's got it. And you know what is very, very, I think, remarkable about all this is that she's in hiding. She's somebody who's really fought against what is called an autocratic regime, seen to it that and you know, it's the same story everywhere, but it is a universal story that Marina Machado, she won this, and one of the reasons is, Maria, I beg your pardon, and that is because of, you know, what leaders do across the world to safeguard the life and dignity of people, to stand up against repression, to stand up against rights. And I think, you know, the panel has done very well for itself to prove yet again that this is a much bigger win than, let us say, anybody else who was in the reckoning to win. Against the oppression, against the fear of being you know, taken into custody or tortured, this is Maria Corina Machado, who has been the winner for the Peace Prize for 2025, essentially for her peaceful resistance against the Venezuelan government, particularly after the disputed presidential elections. It also goes on to set a tone, Sudha, that Nobel Peace Prize cannot be extracted out of...
by the president and his supporters, domestically and internationally, affected the deliberations and the thinking in the committee.
In the long history of the Nobel Peace Prize, I think this committee have seen any type of campaign, media attention. We receive thousands and thousands of letters every year of people wanting to say what for them leads to peace. This committee sits in a room filled with the portraits of all laureates, and that room is filled with both courage and integrity. So we base only our decision on the work and the will of Alfred Nobel.
Hello, Bibiana Piena from the Norwegian News Agency. As you state in your explanation, more and more countries are moving in a more autocratic direction. Would you say that the committee, by this prize, is sending a warning to the world?
Living in a world where we have less and less democracies and more authoritarian regime means that the world is also getting more unsafe. And we believe that peace, democracy is a precondition for peace. And so, yes, that is the message to the world. We need to support the democratic forces also on behalf of peace. Thank you.
Mieszko Czarnecki, the Polish press agency, PAP. This is the next Nobel Peace Prize in recent years when woman has been awarded. Do you feel that women all over the world and in certain countries play a significant...
My colleague Sudha Sadanand continues to be with us. Sudha, I was asking you that this is only the second such Nobel Peace Prize awarded to a woman. It also goes on to send a message across that no matter what may be your political position, you may be the president of a state, but you can't really assert your position to try and ask for a Nobel Peace Prize like Donald Trump did.
You know, so far as the numbers are concerned, only 19 women have so far been awarded the Nobel Prize, as against 72. So, you know, women, more and more women coming to the forefront and winning the Nobel Prize is, of course, a very heartening thing. But let's talk about, you know, Maria, as it were. What challenges? I mean, if you look at the pictures, I remember one iconic picture where she's standing above, a vehicle and addressing the people. She was threatened. She never backed down. She's got kids, but she said, no, I'm going to give it a full good fight. There was a time when they thought that, that she was fighting against a very repressive regime, that maybe she will back down. But she did not. I think she always remembered that it is the Bolivar, that, the inspiration of Simon Bolivar, that she, was inspired by and decided that she's going to stand there and never back down. And kudos, really, very well done, considering, like I said, once again, for me, the kernel of this win is the winning of democratic principles, of rights of people, and to say no to repression. The world over, we've had many political kind of, conflicts across the world where we've seen, whether it's in Africa, South Africa, whether it's in Asia largely, and mostly it turns political and then somewhere it peters down. But in this case, it's come to fruition, and that is what is fantastic about it. Samya?
Absolutely. Her struggle and her entire gamut of work when it comes to standing up for the people and not being bothered with what the consequences may be for standing up to an authoritarian rule is something that did catch the attention of the panel at the Nobel Peace Prize, and today she is the winner. But I have to take you back, Sudha, to what Donald Trump was saying. He went on to say that Barack Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize for nothing, and he tried to take the credit for stopping the war between India-Pakistan, which has been refuted time and again, whether it is between the Russia-Ukraine that he has been mediating. Positioning yourself as the messiah clearly is not the way the Nobel panel is going to look at you.
Well, it's very much like when you get the Oscars. I mean, there are a lot of contenders. They say that they should have gotten it because they did better and so on and so forth. But I really think the panel must have, gone over this and given it a very good thought to see that a leader from Venezuela, it's a very small, it's a blip of a country when you compare it with the US of A. And, to give it, there is a message there for me to say that not to perhaps a repressor, not to someone who talks about immigrants and their loss of rights, and I'm going to stick my neck out and talk about Trump here, who's made everybody nervous, as against someone who's holding your hand, Maria, and saying, you don't have rights today in your own country, rise up and we shall see to it that we all blossom together.
Absolutely, Sudha. Thank you for putting it like that. But I have to ask you about the fact that this appears to be a huge snub for Donald Trump, a royal snub at that. He built up this the entire tempo around him to make it look like he is going to be the one who is in the reckoning. He is going to be the one who will perhaps have a strong chance at bagging the prestigious Nobel Peace Prize. But it's clearly those people who are there standing with the people, their countrymen on ground, and taking strides towards a revolution at that, and leading it from the front.
You know, these words, revolution, standing up, I do not want to second guess what Donald will do, but then I think he's going to perhaps say exactly that the panel wanted to support somebody who talks about a revolution. I have brought a revolution. You never know, you know, Samia. Trump is so unpredictable. And I'm sure that he will kind of diss the panel, speak that the panel did not do what it took. Or perhaps, you know, which is if he's prudent, he'll say that, well, there's always a next time. Samia?
Absolutely. We have to mention that Donald Trump did stand for Maria when she was being subjected to all the sorts of difficulty in her mission against the authoritarian rule in Venezuela. But thank you for now, Sudha Sadanand, for getting us all those details. We shall leave it at that for the moment. And with that, we're slipping into a short break right now. Lots more lined up. Stay tuned.
This is India's #1 news network and you're watching News9 English.
पेंटिंग में पहली बार बिरला ओपस अश्योरेंस 1 साल में पेंट को कुछ भी हुआ तो पेंटिंग वापस करके देंगे। रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर।
This is India's #1 news network and you're watching News9 English news as it should be.
Welcome. Now, Typhoon Halong slams Japan with record winds, triggering emergency warnings across the region. Japan's Izu Islands, including Hachijo and Aogashima, are facing the brunt of Typhoon Halong, with record-breaking rainfall and wind speeds reaching up to 250 kilometers per